Hi, I'm Kyle, 35, and last month I found out my dad left everything to my stepbrother. Everything. House. Truck. Bank accounts. And I found out from Facebook. It was a Tuesday when I got tagged in the post. A photo of my dad's old Dodge, faded red, dented tailgate, missing hubcap, parked in front of my stepbrother Tyler's house with a caption that read, "Can't believe it's really mine. Miss you every day, Pops." I stared at it like it would change if I blinked enough. I didn't even know Dad was gone. I was on my lunch break, halfway through a stale sandwich at my clinic, reading patient files. I'd been meaning to call him. For weeks. Just to check in. See how the arthritis was. But life doesn't care about intentions. Life hands you a Facebook post and a knot in your stomach. I called my Aunt Susan first. She answered on the second ring with a shaky, "Hey, hon. He's gone?" I asked. A long pause. "I thought you knew." "Obviously not. He died a week ago. Heart attack. Quick. Alone. Found by the neighbor who borrowed his mower. The funeral? Already happened. Private, per Tyler's wishes." That word made my teeth ache. Tyler. My dad's stepson. Not his kid. Not his blood. Just a 28-year-old who moved in 6 years ago, when Dad remarried late in life to a woman named Margie who always smelled like orange juice and disapproval. I called Tyler next. He answered like he'd been expecting it. "Hey, bro," he said. "Bro. You buried my father without telling me," I said. He sighed, like I was the one being difficult. "It was Margie's call. She said it'd be easier this way. Less drama." "And the will?" I asked. He didn't hesitate. "All legit. Dad left it all to me. The house, the truck, the accounts. Said I was the only one who really showed up for him." My mouth went dry. I called him every week. Calls aren't the same as changing his oil. And just like that, I saw it clear. This wasn't a mix-up. This wasn't paperwork confusion, or a delayed message. This was a choice. Dad's choice. He picked Tyler. I hung up without saying goodbye. Sat in my office staring at the photos on the wall, patients smiling with improved posture, a frame that said alignment is everything. I laughed once. It sounded hollow. My name's Kyle. I'm 35. I fix backs for a living, but nothing in my life felt straight anymore. The thing about grief is, it's not always about the person who died. Sometimes, it's about everything they took with them. I didn't cry that night. I cleaned. I Windexed the fridge for no reason. I vacuumed under the couch. I organized the drawer that only holds batteries and expired coupons. I wanted control of something. Then I opened the file cabinet. I pulled out a thick manila folder labeled Dad. Birth certificate copy. Old cards he'd sent me. A tight sheet of his medications I kept from when he was in the hospital 5 years ago. I held it like proof I was a real son. Like a judge might call it Exhibit A. I flipped through until I hit a copy of the will he'd given me, from 4 years ago. It was short and clear. My name. Sole beneficiary. He even added in his shaky handwriting. Because Kyle always takes care of me. So what changed? I dug deeper. I found receipts from the trip to Florida I booked for him. The walker I bought out of pocket. A bill I paid when his insurance dropped the ball. And still, somehow, Tyler got the house with the blue shutters Dad knew I loved. The house where I learned to ride a bike. The house with the mark on the door frame where my height was tracked in pencil from age 7 to 17. It all belonged to a guy who once told me, "Chiropractic is basically witchcraft." By morning, I was vibrating with a quiet rage. Not screaming. Not punching walls. Just that kind of anger that hums under your skin. I called my dad's lawyer. "Mr. Franklin passed, yes?" "I'm sorry," the assistant said. "Tyler Duncan is the named heir. Power of attorney was transferred to him 2 years ago. Can I see the paperwork?" "Only with Tyler's permission." I nearly choked. "I'm his son. I understand. But legally." She trailed off, sympathy without solutions. I hung up and went to work. My hands were steady. My voice was calm. I adjusted spines while mine felt like it was splintering. At lunch, I texted Margie. I'd like to pick up some of Dad's things. Photos. Letters. Personal stuff. She replied with a thumbs up emoji. Just that. That Saturday, I drove to the house that used to be mine. The blue shutters were freshly painted. The old porch swing was gone. A private property, signs sat on the lawn like punctuation. Tyler answered the door in sweatpants and a smug smile. Didn't expect you to actually come. I'm here for Dad's things. His desk. The box in the closet. The photo albums. He scratched his jaw. Right. About that, Margie already donated most of it. Sorry. I felt it. Like a punch with no wind-up. What? Look, man, it's not personal, he said, stepping out onto the porch. You're a good guy, but you were always more. Phone support. I was boots on the ground. I stared at him. So you took the house, the truck, the money, and gave away his memories? He shrugged. It's just stuff. I nodded. Once. Twice. Then I turned and walked away, afraid of what I'd say if I stayed. Back in my car, I sat in silence for a long time. Then I pulled out my phone and opened a new note. Operation Reclaim. Not the house. Not the money. Something else. Legacy. Truth. Story. If they were going to erase me from Dad's ending, I'd start writing my own beginning. 2 weeks later, I stood in front of a microphone at a crowded VFW hall with my father's face printed on a poster behind me, because if they weren't going to give me a funeral, I was going to host one myself. I called it a memorial, but really, it was a reckoning. I paid for the room. I ordered the catering, sandwich platters, potato salad, and lemonade that tasted like dentist rinse. I invited everyone he knew. Neighbors, old friends from the bowling league, even his barber. The invite said, for those who knew John Rowley beyond the obituary. I didn't ask Tyler or Margie. I didn't need to. At 3 p.m., the hall was full. Every chair taken. People standing at the back. Some were dressed up. Some wore John Deere hats and orthopedic sneakers. A woman in her 70s clutched a ceramic turtle Dad once won at a fair. She whispered, "He gave it to me for luck." I stepped up to the mic. My palms were slick. My heart thudded. My name is Kyle Rowley. I'm John's son. That got quiet. The kind of quiet where even cups stop clinking. I didn't get to go to his funeral, I said, because I didn't know he was gone. I found out on Facebook. So I'm doing this now. Because my father wasn't just a name on a will or a piece of mail. He was a man. Complicated. Tough. Soft in weird ways. Terrible with technology. Great with engine trouble. The kind of guy who kept extra spark plugs in his garage and called every pizza joint by the name it had in 1996. A few people chuckled. Someone near the back whispered, "True." I took a breath. I'm not here to argue over who deserved what. I'm here to remember who he was. Not what he left behind. And then I told stories. I told them about the time he helped me build a treehouse using only a rusty handsaw and sheer spite. I told them how he once drove through a snowstorm to bring me chicken noodle soup in college, and how he kept the Tupperware. I told them how he used to yell at the TV during football games like the players could hear him. And how he cried when the dog died, but pretended he had allergies. I didn't read from a script. I talked the way people talk at tailgates and long drives. I laughed. I cried once, just once, on the word regret, and moved on. And when I finished, people clapped. Clapped like I'd given them something they didn't know they needed. Afterward, people came up one by one. They told me stories of my dad I'd never heard. How he used to shovel the neighbor's walk without asking. How he fixed a radiator in exchange for homemade cobbler. How he always said, "My boy's gonna be a doctor. Cracks backs better than a chiropractor on YouTube." I smiled so hard it hurt. Then someone tapped my shoulder. It was Tyler. He wasn't smiling. "Nice little performance," he said. "It wasn't for you," I said. He crossed his arms. "You trying to embarrass us?" Make me look like the bad guy. No, I said, calm as a still lake. You're doing that just fine on your own. He sneered. What do you want, Kyle? A check? A room in the house? Half the truck bed? I shook my head. I want the truth. And I want it on record. He blinked. I pulled out a folded piece of paper from my back pocket. I handed it to him. It was a formal request. An attorney-reviewed petition to contest the will. Not because I wanted the money, but because something about it didn't add up. The dates. The signatures. The timing of the power of attorney. You forged it? I asked, not loudly, but clearly enough that a few heads turned. His jaw clenched. I'm going to find out, I said. So here's your one chance to talk like a brother, not a defendant. He looked around. People watching. Waiting. Whispering. He didn't say a word. Just walked out of the hall with his shoulders tight and his ego dragging behind him. I didn't follow. I stayed. Because this time, I was the one who showed up. The thing about legal battles is they don't move like movies. They move like molasses. Thick. Slow. Sticky. I filed the petition a week after the memorial. The lawyer I hired was a woman named Corey who wore gray suits and spoke in full sentences like she charged by the comma. She read everything twice and underlined in red. I showed her the old will, my copy. She nodded, calm as a monk. This isn't nothing, she said. This is a thread. She started pulling it. Meanwhile, Tyler did what Tyler does. He posted photos of steaks on grills, him at the gym with captions like, "Build not bought," and "Hustle louder." He never mentioned the case. But he changed the locks at Dad's house and started parking the Dodge around the corner, like the truck could testify. Margie stayed quiet. I started digging. I didn't have much, just my gut and a folder. But I still had the number of Dad's old neighbor, Mr. Kessler. Retired math teacher, suspicious of Wi-Fi, loyal to coffee so strong it could dissolve steel. We met at a diner. He wore a windbreaker from the 80s and brought his own pen. I remember the day that Tyler kid came back with papers. He said over hash browns. Your dad looked off. Nervous. Kept checking the mailbox like it was ticking. Do you know what was in the papers? Nope. But Margie started calling him our provider like he was Santa with a mortgage. I asked if Dad ever mentioned changing the will. Only thing he said, Kessler said, was people start counting your money before your pulse fades. I wrote it down. Then I called the bank. With Corey's help, we subpoenaed account records. The week Dad signed over power of attorney? A $10,000 withdrawal to cash. Right before a fishing trip Tyler posted about with a caption that said, Investing in peace. It smelled wrong. I went to the county office and pulled the death certificate. I requested medical records. I looked at the date of the will revision and my stomach dropped. My dad had been hospitalized that week. On oxygen. In pain. Barely able to sign a dinner check, let alone a legal document. I brought it all to Corey. She leaned back, hands steepled. This smells like undue influence. Maybe even fraud. I exhaled. Hard. She added, we'll file for discovery. You might not get the house back, but we could invalidate the will. Possibly recoup some of the assets. I nodded. Good. But I want more than that. What? I want the truth recorded somewhere permanent. That he was my father. That I showed up. That he wasn't just a dollar sign to me. She smiled small. That we can do. Then she paused. This will get ugly, Kyle. They'll call you greedy. They'll say you're doing this for revenge. I looked her straight on. I'm doing it for the man who taught me to change a tire in the rain. For the kid who brought him soup in a dorm. For the version of me that sat alone on a Tuesday and found out his father was gone from a social media caption. Corey nodded. Let's wreck him gently. So we filed. The court date was set. Tyler posted a photo of himself in sunglasses with a quote that said, Lions don't worry about sheep. Cool, I thought. Sheep file lawsuits too. The court date was set for March, but the real battle started long before the judge ever walked in. First came the letters from Tyler's attorney, slick, sharp, and full of phrases like baseless, emotional distress, and my personal favorite, disgruntled biological relation. Corey replied with facts. We included the medical records, the inconsistencies in Dad's signature, the conflicting dates, a notarization from a UPS store that listed a witness who, upon investigation, turned out to be Margie's cousin Denny, who once got kicked out of Dave and Buster's for trying to return arcade tokens for cash. Then the social fallout began. Margie posted a photo of my dad's recliner and wrote, "It breaks my heart that people only show up when there's money to grab." The comments poured in. "You're so strong, Margie. Your son is such a blessing. Shame on that other one. She never tagged me. She didn't have to." Everyone knew. Even patients at my clinic started bringing it up. "You okay, doc?" They'd ask after an adjustment. "You don't deserve that mess." Or worse, "You know, money changes people." It doesn't, though. Money reveals people. And what it revealed in Tyler was a scared little boy in designer sneakers trying to wear my dad's flannel and fill a pair of shoes he never broke in. He messaged me once, "You're seriously going through with this?" I didn't reply. I was too busy building something bigger than a case. I made a website. Not a flashy one. Just a clean white page titled, "For John Rowley." I uploaded photos, stories, a guest book where anyone could write their memories. I shared it quietly. No drama. No jabs. Just truth. And people showed up. A guy named Mitch wrote about how Dad once pulled over on the highway to help him change a tire. Didn't know him at all. A woman named Sheila remembered how Dad fixed her screen door one summer and wouldn't take a dime. Even Aunt Susan wrote a note. He wasn't perfect, but he was present. And Kyle, you were too. I read every entry, every sentence. And slowly, the bitterness started to soften. Not vanish. Not yet. But soften, like ice melting around the edges. Then one day, I got a text. Not from Tyler. Not from Margie. From the county clerk. "A new will has been located. Drafted 1 year after the one naming Tyler. You may want to review this." I forwarded it to Corey without breathing. It took her 2 hours to call back. Her voice was low but electric. "It names you, Kyle. As the sole heir. Everything." I sat down hard on the floor of my clinic. "He changed it back?" I asked. She took a breath. "Seems like he did. The signature is shaky, but it's dated, witnessed, notarized. And not by Denny. This is clean." I looked at the ceiling like Dad might be there grinning behind a cloud. Why didn't I get notified? It wasn't filed through the same attorney. Looks like he changed counsel after a dispute. My guess? He knew something wasn't right. Tyler hadn't just lost the case. He was about to lose the story he'd been selling for 2 years. The next hearing wasn't a battle. It was an unveiling. Tyler's lawyer stammered. Margie cried. Actually cried. I stood in the courtroom, heart hammering, hands cold, and listened as the judge read aloud the final paragraph. "To my son Kyle, who shows up, who doesn't ask for much, and who somehow still forgives more than I probably deserve, I leave everything I have. I hope this makes something easier. And I hope you buy the good back roller this time. Love, Dad." I laughed. Quiet and broken. Because even from the grave, he was still making jokes about posture. Winning doesn't feel how you think it will. There's no parade. No fist pump. No sudden clarity that makes everything make sense. There's just you, standing in your own life, holding the keys to a house you didn't think you'd ever walk into again. That Friday, I did. I parked in the driveway. Not around the corner like Tyler. Not out of sight. Right there in front, where Dad always said, "Don't block the mailbox. Post office gets snippy." The house looked smaller. The shutters were still blue, but the color had dulled. The grass was patchy. A gutter sagged like it missed being useful. I walked up the steps slowly, key in hand, and opened the door to the scent of old carpet and whatever plug-in Margie thought covered up cigarettes. Inside, it was clean, but not right. Dad's recliner was gone. So was the coffee table I helped him refinish the year he got sciatica and suddenly trusted me with sandpaper. The walls had new photos, none with me. None with him, even. It was like someone had tried to erase him, but ran out of whiteout. I walked room to room. I found the pantry still stocked with canned beans. The drawer with loose screws and rubber bands untouched. A single mug in the sink that said World's Okayest Golfer. And then I opened the hall closet. Top shelf. Black box. Labeled in Sharpit, K, for when I'm not around. I froze. I pulled it down with shaking hands, sat cross-legged on the old carpet, and opened it. Inside were things I didn't know I needed. A photo of me at age 10, holding up a trophy bigger than my torso. A crayon drawing I made him, folded carefully like it was a blueprint to his heart. My old report cards. Receipts from when he came to see me speak at my chiropractic school graduation. He circled the line that said chicken dinner, and wrote, "Too dry." There was a letter, too. In blocky, careful handwriting. "Kyle. I screwed up, didn't I? You called. You visited. You helped. I didn't say thank you enough. I let other people get in my ear when I should have been listening to my gut. You know that gut, the one you say I wrecked with gas station burritos. I didn't like hospitals. Didn't like facing my own end. Tyler offered to handle it, and I let him. That was a mistake. So I changed it back. Quietly. Properly. Not because I wanted revenge. Just because I wanted you to know, I saw you. I always did. You were never the loudest, but you were the most consistent. That matters more than anything. Keep fixing backs. Keep doing the stretches. Keep your heart open, but protect it better than I did. The house is yours. Do whatever you want with it. But I hope you keep the tree out back. It always reminded me of you. Love. Dad. I sat there until the sun shifted across the floor. Not crying exactly. Just leaking in a very dignified adult way. I stayed in that house for hours. I walked the backyard. Touched the trunk of the tree. Found my initials carved next to his in sloppy, overlapping lines. I drove home at dusk, windows down, the letter on the passenger seat like a second chance riding shotgun. At work the next morning, Leia asked, "You okay?" I smiled. "No. But getting there." She nodded like she understood. And maybe she did? Because that was the beginning of after. The part where grief doesn't disappear, but it stops owning you. The first thing I did with the house was nothing. No renovation montage. No dramatic, for sale, sign. No flipping it for profit to teach anyone a lesson. I just let it sit. I came by after clinic hours. Sat on the porch with a gas station coffee and let the silence of it wrap around me like a weighted blanket. The house felt like a question. What now? It wasn't just wood and drywall. It was where Dad taught me to drive in the gravel alley. Where I ate SpaghettiOs watching late-night Jeopardy. Where he yelled at me for wrecking his tape measure and then silently replaced it in my toolbox the next day. It felt like him. And also, like something else now. Something that belonged to me, not because I fought for it, but because I stayed for it. I started small. I rehung the wind chime that had been shoved in the garage. Cleaned out the gutters. Fixed the screen door with Dad's old tools. I replaced nothing that held a memory. But I did box up everything that didn't. Margie showed up once. Midday. No warning. Parked crooked in the driveway like an accusation. I stepped outside. She looked smaller. Or maybe I looked bigger. "Came to see the damage," she said, arms folded. "It's a house," I said. "Not a battlefield." She stared me down. "You know he promised Tyler he'd be taken care of. Did he write it down?" I asked. Her lips pressed in. "He said it. He also said I was the only person who ever got him to eat a salad. Doesn't mean I'm opening a kale museum." She looked past me at the porch, at the chair with the dented cushion. "Do you really think Tyler did all this to screw you over?" "No," I said. "I think he did it to feel chosen." She flinched. I let that sit. Then added, "You don't need to pick a side, Margie. But if you stay silent, you already did." She didn't answer. Just got back in her car and drove away like the road owed her something. I watched her go, then went back inside. That night I called Aunt Susan. I'm keeping it, I said. The house? Yeah. Not forever. But for now. I want to make it something again. She sniffled softly. He'd like that. I think so too. A few weeks later, I started something new. Saturday mornings. Free spinal screenings in the living room. Couch pushed back. Portable table set up. Local seniors, new moms, warehouse guys. Word spread fast. I called it Pop's Alignments. People loved it. One guy cried when he realized the old fridge still had magnets with his kids' photos on it from 10 years ago. I left them up. The front door never locked during those hours. The coffee was strong. The jokes were worse. The tips came in Tupperware. And still, Tyler never came by. He sent one email. I hope you're happy now. I didn't reply. Because I was happy. And replying would have made it about him again. And I was done living there. The house? Still mine. But the grief? That was moving out. A year to the day after I found out my dad was gone, from a Facebook post, from a life he supposedly left to someone else, I stood in the doorway of his house holding a set of keys I almost didn't get. And this time, I didn't feel like I was trespassing in my own history. The house had changed, but not how people expected. It wasn't flipped. It wasn't modernized. It was opened. Pop's Alignments became more than Saturday back cracks. It turned into a community clinic 2 days a week. A sliding scale operation where a guy could get relief from sciatica without handing over his rent money. The kitchen table was always full. Sometimes with charts, sometimes with cobbler from Mrs. Finnegan down the street. I added a bulletin board on the wall labeled John's Wisdom. People pin notes. Fix it if you can. Don't loan what you can't lose. Mow before it rains. That last one was mine. One day, I found a folded sheet of paper pinned there with no name. It said, "He loved you. Even when he couldn't say it out loud. Don't let grief turn into debt. Let it be interest that pays you back in love." I kept that one. Tyler never contacted me again. Not really. He posted vague messages on social media, took up some kind of drop-shipping hustle, and once tagged me in a meme about some people only love when there's money involved. I blocked him. Not out of anger. Out of peace. Because I don't need to carry people who only show up with expectations instead of effort. Margie eventually moved out of state. No forwarding address. Just silence with a polite finish. And Dad? Well, he shows up in small ways. In the creak of the third stair. In the socket wrench I keep in my car, because he always said, "Even if you're not a mechanic, be prepared like one." In the Saturdays I now guard like sacred ground, coffee brewed, table set, patients limping in and walking out straighter. Grief still visits. But it knocks now. Doesn't barge in. I kept the ceramic mug that says "World's Okayest Golfer." It sits on the porch railing filled with pens, because I swear he'd appreciate the irony. Sometimes I talk to the tree out back. Not because I think it talks back. But because I like who I am when I'm standing under it. A son who showed up. A man who didn't cave. A chiropractor, a fixer, a builder of boundaries. My name is Kyle. I'm 35. And a year ago, I lost my father. But I found something else in the rubble of that silence. A backbone. Not just one I adjust for a living, but one I finally grew for myself. And you know what? It holds. It stands. It stays.